Okie dokie. Let's go ahead and get started. I don't see any questions in the Q&A just yet, but feel free to get them in there. Pulling up our FAQs. Okay, let's go through our changelog first. So it looks like we have some updates to the system. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. So within your open to close account, when you log in, you're going to go up to the person icon and you're going to go down to changelog. And this is going to pull up the changelog for us. Looks like we just had an update a couple days ago. So I know we always do them on like Fridays, basically. So we always either do them on like a Friday or like a weekend. We're trying to do it at a time where it's not going to interrupt your guys' process in case there's like an update to the system. But here are the different updates that we had recently. Calendar and event sync, a intake approval and email triggers, calendar list, property tables and linked properties, and API and authorization. Something that, so I was involved with the calendar list issue. In case any of you guys were also seeing this, there was this thing where clients were having like, they had, let's say like 20 calendars that they were invited to, right? You might be invited to all of your agents' calendars. And so when you're sending out those calendar invites through Google Calendar or Microsoft, I think, you want to be able to pull a list. And for whatever reason, one of our clients was only seeing like kind of random. It was like random, some people, but not everyone. And there didn't seem to be any rhyme or reason to it. But now we've fixed that. So that way it resyncs and it actually does pull in all of the available calendars that you have access to. So that has been corrected. If any of you guys are noticing that, I feel like I had access to 50 calendars, Hannah, and now suddenly I only have access to 20. That should be updated. You should be able to just navigate over to your gear icon. I'm actually going to expand this gear. Gear icon, you'll scroll down. You can go into your global settings. You'll head down to calendars, and then you should be able to say resync calendars. And then that will update and refresh that list and bring in all of the calendars that you have access to. You can see I've got quite a number on my list as well. Just wanted to point that out because I know that a couple people were kind of seeing that issue, and that's kind of a big thing, I'd say, when we want to make sure that our calendars are, sending out the events to the correct place. But yeah, just wanted to make sure that you guys knew about that. I'm still not seeing any questions in the Q&A. I don't think that there's anything else that oh, oh, this is so funny. Parent and the linked properties. It was removed for a moment there on accident, I would say. It was removed on accident. We were making some updates when if any of you guys were on the grow plan and you were noticing, oh, when I'm on the grow plan, there was some weird formatting happening and it was like chunkier than it was normally, right? It looked kind of like these two buttons were underneath. And so then it was kind of like a little bit chunkier. We noticed that that might have been happening because of the linked properties. And so we went in and we fixed it, and the linked properties and parent properties got removed at the same time on accident, but it's back now. So if you guys are going over to your property tables and segments and you're like, oh my gosh, I had that and it's not there anymore, it should be there now. So it should be there. It looks like this right now. They look great. That's what we want to see. Perfect. Let me see if there's anything else on that change log that I want to highlight. Looks like there's some stuff for intake form and email triggers that are getting sent out, but it looks like that's now fixed. And it looks like the emails were still sending successfully, but they weren't, you still had to do some additional clicking to get it to actually go out to process the remaining triggers. It looks like it kind of stopped itself. Maybe what I bet anything what was happening was it was trying to send it out. It got one out and it timed out and it wasn't able to process the rest of the triggers, but now that's been corrected. So intake forms are looking good too. Other than that, if you guys have any other questions as far as for the changelog, I definitely recommend coming to look to see what we've done. If you are running into an issue and you think it might be something that's affecting other users, because you're seeing it affect your other team members, then it might be a global issue. And so we might post about an update here. The calendar list, the one that I was talking about earlier, that was a global issue. It was affecting all of you guys, but not everyone saw that issue. Something that has come up recently, and I feel like it's probably going to be in our FAQs. I'm just going to double check. It looks like it's not, but it might come up into our FAQs. Is when we talk about Google. If you ever change your password for your Gmail account, you are most likely going to need to reset the connection with Open to Close. Just because Open to Close doesn't know that you updated the password, and Google's going to be like, "Hey, cut it, like disconnect quickly." Like this is, just like how if you change your password and you get logged out of other devices, it's the same thing with this. You would get logged out of Open to Close. So just keep that in mind. If you need to make a password update, know that you are also going to have to make that update within Open to Close as well. Anytime you disconnect or reconnect your password, when you go to a property, give it a second to remember that you need to send out emails for it, right? You might go up to that health bar and it might have a trigger in here that says 400 error. Just try to send it anyways. And if it goes out, fantastic. If it doesn't go out and it says invalid send from email, you're going to click on your downwards arrow, defaults and settings. Then you're just going to double check that your default email is selected here. That's the main thing that you want to make sure is selected. We want to make sure that that's there. That way we can know for sure that when we send out that email, it's sending out to the correct one. Cool. All right, let's take a look at these FAQs. If you guys have any questions, please feel free to get them into the Q&A and we will answer them in the order that they are received. Taking a look at our FAQs. Oh, where do I locate a saved draft of an email, or how do I unschedule a scheduled email? What we're going to want to do is we're going to want to navigate to the property that we're trying to find that email on. If we've already saved a draft of it or we're already scheduled it out, we're going to head to emails. Once we're on emails, we can see the scheduled ones here. So I don't have any scheduled emails right now, but we'd be able to see those emails here. If we wanted to see emails that we've drafted, most likely those email triggers are still going to be up here waiting for the queue, right? I can edit one of these email templates. If I select edit and render their merge fields, then I technically have that email template up here. I don't know if there's another draft area down here. Kelly, do you know if there's another draft area that I'm not thinking of?
Not really. The only thing I can think of is maybe if you have your email connected, it may be a draft in your actual email inbox, or well, not
Mm,
email inbox. That
you know
may
what?
be a possibility. But I'm also thinking, or it might show up when you click save draft. When you're on the, if you started it from like a task, sending that email, I do know that it stays there. Like when you're on the task templates.
Yes.
So if you started it like just right there where Hannah's at now, well, not even as a trigger on with the little email icon next.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, if you started the second one,
Second
oop,
one. This,
or the
this
fourth
one.
one,
This one. Send
that
an
one.
email. Woo,
Yeah, if
there we
you
go.
draft it here, it does stay here, but it doesn't tell you there's a draft there. So that
Yeah.
might be why you
This could
can't
also
find
be where.
it.
Yeah. I noticed that when we were on that email, it was just a really fast, like, because we've got some stuff on here, but I noticed this one and I clicked on it and I'm looking at the FAQ because we do, you know what's wonderful? Our team is so great. When they send us over the FAQs, they give us the answer too. But I sometimes like to kind of use my brain a bit. I'm flexing my brain. It's my muscles I'm using in my brain right now to try to figure out, do I know where this is without looking at the answer first? It's kind of like a, what do they call it? I feel like I'm going to, it's quiz night. All right. And I'm not looking at the answers. I might have the answers, but I'm not looking at them. I want to guess it first. It has this, and they're saying that not on the property, but if you're on that email connection, like Kelly was saying, so it looks like drafts will show up here as well. So if you
Interesting.
are on a property and you create an email and you say save as a draft, it looks like the drafts, if you say save as a draft, they show up here. If you're on that property, just like Kelly said, and you create an email that's here, it's going to save that content here on that email. If you just select that send an email button. Some of you guys might be like, I didn't even know there was like a send an email button from a task. This is something that was in TC Workflow, is our previous system that we had with Open to Close. It has been since then archived, shut down. But this was one of those tools that when clients were transitioning from TC Workflow into Open to Close, they were like, I really want to be able to send an email from a task. Like, can you add that in there? Other than having our automated triggers, right? Having these triggers automatically either send out automatically or go up to the health bar, they wanted to have a button to send out a quick email here. So we did add that in there just so that we could have that in there. I don't think it's a bad thing to do. It's not a bad thing, but again, I would typically recommend if it is an email that you are sending more than 3 times on 3 different properties, that needs to be a trigger. Needs to be a trigger. It doesn't make sense for you to have to click on email here and either draft it or click on apply template, search for the email template, apply it, and then send it out. Why not just have a trigger? And if you need to edit it, you just edit it. You know what I mean? Like we're talking about like ease of use, what's going to be easier for us. The other part that I like to bring up with this too is when we talk about onboarding new team members. Is it going to be really easy to tell them that they need to click on send an email, apply the email template, look for the email template, then edit it, then send it out? Or is it easier to say you're going to check it off and the email's going to go up to the health bar and then you can inspect it. If you need to make updates to it, you can say edit fields if it's just the fields, or you can say edit and you can edit the email template itself. We're talking about what is the quickest, easiest way for us to get that information out. That's where that automation starts to come into play. The less clicks, the less places that we need to look, the better it is for us in the long run. Less decision making. Cool. Looks like we have a question. Let me take a look at this. I'm having an issue with the date field on one date. I want to have the option days for pre-approval. Most of the time, the pre-approval date is the same as the contract acceptance, but sometimes it changes. When I try to set up a pre-approval days field, it's not defaulting to the contract acceptance date. It shows up blank. How do I set up the days field to have either the same date as another date or to follow the following days field? Oh, this is a really good question, Belinda. Let's see if we can brainstorm this together. I'm going to head over to our hammer icon, into our templates, and then we're going to go into our date templates. For anyone who's not familiar with date templates is a tool that we can use to automatically calculate certain dates. That's how we can get dates to populate the way that we need them to populate on the property. So for example, I've got this earnest money one, and the way that it works is I have it as 3 calendar days after execution date. That's when my earnest money due date is. Or if I put in a different value, I say 5, I say 2, I say 7 in this earnest money due days field, it's going to default to that instead. So how do we handle it this other way, right? How do we have it that it comes on to a different time? Looking at this and trying to think about this in the way that you're doing it. So it was the pre-approval date with the pre-approval days. So as you can see from this option here, I have actually, let me just add on another date. Let me add in a pre-approval date. Let me do that. Let's do it like from scratch. So I'm going to go over into my field editor. Did I click on the right one? Field editor. Oh yeah. Okay. Okay, there we go. Awesome. Let's go over to, where do we want to put this? Let's put it in our finance details because it's pre-approval date. And I think that would make sense for it to be in our finance details because I'm talking about approvals there. So I'll say pre-approval. About the pre-approval due date. Make this into a date. Add the field. And then let's add on another field. And we'll call this due days. We have a days for this. Number field. Anytime we're talking about working with our date templates, it's going to need to be a number field, not a text field, a number field. Number field's going to make it so that it's specifically looking for a number of days or a number that's associated with it. I'm going to go ahead and click on my purple icons. That way I can make sure that they show up on the agent portal or on the intake form if I need them to. And then I'm also going to click on that API calendar because I do want my pre-approval due date to be on the API calendar. For anyone who's like, when I send out calendar invites, Hannah, I don't see all of the dates there. Double check your field editor, make sure we have that purple calendar selected. If it's not selected, you're not going to have those dates go out automatically. I actually don't think that those dates go out at all, if I'm being honest with you. And you have to like manually select them and say, this date I want to go out to these particular party members and be on this particular calendar. I think it's very specific. I'm also going to click on my little purple star up here. Hopefully it actually holds on to it. That way I can make sure that my whole field section shows up. So now I have these in here. I'm just going to move my financing type to the top. I just clicked on those three dots to move that to the top. So if any of you guys are adding in new fields and you need to reorder your fields, your 6 dots, that's what lets you move around the fields. I don't think it lets you hop the fields. Yeah, it doesn't let you hop the fields out of the field section, but you can move them around in it. So now that we have this in here, let's go ahead and head back over to our date template. When we talk about our date template, we're going to have one date template with all of our dates. Okay. So I was trying to think of through strategy while I was creating them on how we can get this created. But one thing that one caveat with this is that one date template for one property. If we have 2 date templates, it will ignore whatever the first one was and go with whatever the one is that most recently was added to the property. So could be a solution, could not be a solution, kind of depends. Let's go ahead and add on that date. We're going to go down to our pre-approval due date. So I'm just clicking on add. This is going to show me all of the dates that I have currently built in my system. So you should see all of the dates that are on here. If you are missing a date, I would recommend going back to your field section, your field editor, and double check that it's actually a date. Sometimes we can be moving really quickly, and when we select the type of field that we want to create, we can accidentally select something that we didn't mean to select. What if you accidentally select a number instead of date and it needs to be a date? Or you accidentally selected text when it needed to be a date? When we say it's a date field, we're telling it that, hey, this is going to be associated with a calendar, right? So it has specific rules with it, including having it work with our date template. So here we have our date. I'm going to click on this and we have to walk through this and we have to think about it. If I say same day as execution date, like we want it to be, or let's say contract date in my example. I think that you said contract date, right? Contract acceptance date, contract date, same thing for me. When I say it's going to happen on the same day as that, you can see here that the days and the number field and the when, they're gone. I'm not able to say, or choose this instead, right? So I'm going to say update and I'm going to add it to it. And if I go back to add and I click on that due date again, you can see that I can't add on another rule for that pre-approval due date, right? So it's either this or we're saying that it's based off of calendar days. It happens on a different date. It's associated with that fallback field that we created. We can say calendar days before or after. And so this way it does that. How can we have it that it could be either or? I'm trying to think of the easiest way to do it. There's one way where we can do it where we ask on the intake form whether or not the pre-approval is the same day as contract acceptance or it's a different time, right? It's a days field. It happens at a different time. If we do it that way, we would want to have 2 date templates. One date template built out so that the pre-approval due date is the same day as contract date, and another date template built out to say that we're asking for those pre-approval due days. And when you say it's pre-approval due days, then it brings on that particular date template. You say it's 3, it enters in 3, that gets scheduled. If it's the other one, then it brings on the other date template. So usually at this point, what I like to ask is, are there any other indicators that pre-approval might have additional days to it versus being the same day as contract acceptance? That's a question for you, Belinda.
So another thing, those I've seen those too. And there's almost a third one if you wanted, or I've seen that one. Another one I've seen is they just deal with it with a task.
Mm-hmm.
afterwards, and they don't bother with adding the field on the intake form. It's just a task that they have to do to make sure that it's, set correctly.
Yeah.
Another thing I've seen is they just you just ask for the days, and if they put zero in, like you kind of train your agents to put zero in, or whoever's filling it out to put zero in, and if that days is zero, then it's the same day as, and then it's done by that pre-approval due days, and then you just have to edit from there. But it's kind of that it becomes a task again. So it really seems to be either you have the a field on the intake form asking, is it the same day as, or is it due days? And then you bring on different date templates, or do you want to go some sort of task route and have that be a task that just has to be taken care of?
Yeah, manually done. Yeah. Belinda, I was asking when it is like due days, right? When it's like multiple, like when it is like multiple days, right? You say that it's like 3 days for this. Is there any other way to indicate that it would be multiple days? Or is it like it just depends on the contract and it's completely separate from everything else? Because I'm trying to think of another way that we could trigger it to have it come on. I think that the way that Kelly recommended it would probably be the best. Either having it that you have um, a question on your intake form that asks, um, is pre-approval due same day as contract acceptance? Or, and we can build out a field for it. Let me show you what I'm talking about. We'll go over to our field editor. We'll go down to I'd say that's a contract question, and we could say pre-approval. Um, we can't call it due date because that's not going to work.
Is pre-approval due days or the same day as,
We could do that.
or something like that? Is the pre-approval due in days or same day as contract? That
We
seems
could do
really long. That's
pre-approval
long.
due because this is going to be on our intake form, right? We're going to be asking our agent this question. We could do pre-approval due, make it a choice question. Well, we can say same day as contract acceptance. Ooh, would your clients understand would your agents understand what number of days would be though? That would be
Mine,
the thing.
mine did because our contract was that way. It was either a
It says it on the
set
contract.
amount or it literally said blank. It literally had a blank line and days.
Okay.
So that would for in my case, but hopefully. Oh, well, that helps. The intake form is only for her. So that's cool. That helped
Oh,
you a lot.
perfect. Perfect. Yeah, yeah. I'm scrolling down, so that's perfect. Okay, cool. So I created the field. I created the field, the questions. Let me show you what I'm talking about when we built this out. So I created the field and I asked, we were on secondary intake forms earlier. I'm just gonna put on my buyer side intake questions. I'm gonna ask for this pre-approval due days and due date field, and then let me build out some form conditions with it. I'm moving a little fast. But I just want to kind of show you an example of what it would look like when it's done. There we go. And we'll say days. Here we go. Perfect. Awesome. Let's go take a look at this intake form. So buyer's residential. I'm going to click on secure form, just get a copy of it. We select our team, we select our users, we add in our address, we scroll down, and here we have this question, pre-approval due. If you say number of days, then we'll want to scroll down and we'll have that pre-approval due days. And then here you can put in 3 days if you want to. What we'll also do with this question is that if you say it's number of days, then we'll want to make sure that we also have a form trigger built out to bring on the correct date template. So your date template, you'll have two versions of it. You'll have one that has it the same day as contract date, and the other one will be a different version of it. So I'm going to go here and I'm going to say clone, and I'm going to say, well, I'm just because we're doing this for the pre-approval, I'm just going to do it for this. Because remember what I said, we want one date template to apply. Every single time we want one date template to apply. So now I'm going to change this. I'm going to say business days. You could do it as calendar days if you'd like to too. And I'm going to say update. So here what you'll do is you'll have these two date templates. You've got the traditional one that works with the same day as. You've got the other one that works with the number of days due. You see how I have all the other fields still on here because all of these still work with this one. Here I have that one. And when I go to my intake form and I have that question here, if I say it's number of days, then it's going to bring on that number of days due date template so that that date is populated correctly. But if I say same day as contract acceptance, then I know that the other date template that has the same day as contract acceptance comes on. And the reason I might suggest having it built out through your intake form, and there's some caveats with it, obviously, depending on on your calendar and like, do you have any other fields that work like this for your due dates where sometimes it's same day as or sometimes it's a number of days due? That would be where we would kind of want to explore other options possibly. If this is the only one that's like that, I think I'm safe to say that we're good to do it this way. I don't want you to have more than honestly one or two date templates. Most of you guys should only really have one or two date templates. Then I say one or two because really one should be enough. You should have all the dates that you possibly work with on it, even if it's not applicable to the property. I have stuff about inspection on there. So even if we say there's no inspection, that's okay. If there's no inspection, those fields don't come on. We don't have to worry about the dates being populated. But if they are there, they do populate. The only time that I see this could be an issue is if you go, well, Hannah, I've got another one that could be same day as, or it could be this. That's where we're going to run into a bit of an issue. We can't diverge too far from having multiple versions of our date templates because, like I said, we should only have one date template applied to our property. And if you have one that's, well, this is the one that's with the same day as, and this is the one with the due days. And then I have a third one that's for if it's same day as for a completely different date. But sometimes that same day as could be the days as, like we start to get, it starts to get really complicated really quickly, is what I'm trying to get across. But I would probably suggest, as long as it's straightforward like this is the only date that can be same day as or due days. We might be able to get away with it by having a contract question like this. You answer the question, you say it's the same day as, it applies that correct date template, and then you don't have to worry about updating the field on the property. It'll automatically say, cool, and let me go over to here. That date that we have, which is not going to be in here because I don't have it in here right now, but that date that we have for the pre-approval, that's going to be the same day as contract acceptance date. Or if we say it's a number of days due and you say that it's 3, it's going to be 3 business days, calendar days after contract acceptance or before contract acceptance, whenever it, the time frame needs to be for it. Hopefully that helps. I would probably recommend doing it the intake form way. Again, if you only have that particular date when it's like in this particular case, if it's just the one date, I would recommend this. If you have it that there are multiple other dates that could be the same day as, or it could be due days, that's when I would follow the other route that Kelly offered, which was it's a task and you have them put in 0 if it's 0. And the task is that they are going to you are going to manually update that date. You're going to remove the contingency and you're going to manually update that date to the actual date that it needs to be if it is the same day as.
If I had a contingency on that one, it to make it less clicks for myself, because there were some times that I had that happen too. I actually didn't even change the contingent, or I didn't turn off the contingency. I just updated the contingency to
Mm,
same day as. So I don't know that it
yeah.
made sense when I did it, but looking at it now, I'm like, wow, why didn't I just turn it off?
Yeah, you could have just unselected it instead of and then updated the date and said
but
update. Yeah. And
but
it
at the
really
same
it really
time,
depends.
I guess because you're unclicking it and then you're putting the date in, or like I half the time I didn't remember what the date was, so I just made it contingent. I just changed it here to
Yeah.
instead of calendar day, same day as, and
You
then
said same day as and then you
moved.
popped in whatever the date was, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. So it really depends like where do we want to make this update? And it's this is one thing that's specifically with the dates. It's a specific thing that that we see popping up with the dates. I don't know if we'll ever make an update to that where you can apply more than one date template to a property. The problem is that I can't say you can only have earnest money on this date template and not have it on another date template. And if they have two different values to them, if I say, well, earnest money on this date template is 3 days, but earnest money on this other date template is 5 days, who does it choose? Does it go with the 3 days or the 5 days? It doesn't know what to do. So it just goes, I don't want to do anything. No, I'm just kidding. It breaks. That's what happens. It breaks. So we don't want it to break. We don't want it to break like that. Let
It
me see what this
basically
one is.
says, I don't want to do it either.
Yeah,
It does
yeah.
both.
I think right now the system will default to whatever the most recent update was made to the property. You know how like when we say when we select a calendar and I go to the bottom, if I update this calendar and I say it's this one now, or if I say it's this one now, it says default calendar was updated, but when I sync it, it's updating all of them. When I click on this, it goes, "Are you sure?" Because we're about to send out brand new calendar invites to a completely different calendar. Anytime we make updates like this, including the date template, if I choose a different one and I say update, it is going to update all of them. It says it even here. We have a lot to update. It's going to update oh, that's so cute. Uh, Triggers, contingencies, and tasks, etc. would also need to be updated because the dates are associated with the tasks, right? Cool. You had a question and I kind of want to touch on it. Let's go back over to that D template. Let's open up that, we'll do the pre-approval one here. So you had said, why is it that earnest money has X days after blank? Days will override the X days, if that makes sense. Yes. So when we're looking at this, the days here, so I could say that there is no number field. If there's no number field, it's always going to do the days field. It's always going to do whatever number's here. This is think of this as like, this becomes a hard coded field. Earnest money will always be 3 calendar days after execution date. That's when it gets scheduled. If I have that number field here, the reason that it switches to default to that number field, this is its fallback field. Okay. I don't like the language for that because it sounds like, oh, well, if it's not this, then do this. But it's more of like this gets priority. This number field will get priority if a value is put into it. Think of it like that. The best example that I have was on that property that I was on, Jackson property or Jackson Road. If we went over to my transaction details and we took a look at that earnest money, right now I have it set to 3. I can change this to 5. And we're going to see that date automatically update. And when I click on it, it's going to update that number of days from 3 to 5 when it's on the property. On the date template, we said the default was 3, but the moment we put a value into that earnest money number due days, that's when it's going to update that days number to 5. Or if I change it back to 3, it's going to update that and it's going to take us back to the 11th. Does that make sense? Hopefully. Perfect. I would recommend adding in your date template to the intake form. When we talk about adding in our date templates to the intake forms, it's kind of a toss up. You could have it based off of form approved or form submitted if you wanted to have those dates on there before approval, like right before you approve the intake form. You could have them based off of submitted. I usually recommend having them based off of a form internally approved just in case you need to update any dates after the fact, or if like task templates kind of thing are going to come on after the fact. I usually say like let's get the property created first and then we can go back and we can update the dates if we need to, kind of thing. Like I'd rather you do it based off of when it's actually a property versus making alterations before it's a property. Remember, when we initially submit that intake form, um, these intake forms that are submitted, this is not a property. It's not a property just yet. This is still that intake form that's kind of waiting for you to say, yeah, we're good to go, approve it. It's a property now. So just keep that in mind. I usually recommend if we're adding on task templates or date templates, I usually recommend having them based off of approval unless you're like, Hannah, I really need to see my dates like right away. Like I need to see that timeline before I approve it. If that's the case, then you're going to want to switch that date template and have it based off of submission. That way you can see those dates right away. You just might not see all of the dates because there could be some values that you haven't quite updated. I'm going to go back over to my intake form and I'm going to click on this drop down. So you can see either one can be selected here. And then we're going to say template. Um,
I always like to add the date template upon approval because it never failed that I mean, agents are great, but and you even too, I mean, maybe you look at something on the contract and it's a 3, but it's actually a 1, or your agent put in the wrong number, and then you're calculating all these dates and you're looking at them right away when it's submitted, and
mhm.
basically those dates could be wrong because the days field is wrong, and because the date's already there, I don't think to look at the number of days
Yep,
because they're already there. But again, that's just me too. I know, Belinda, you said you're filling it out. So for you on that instance, I mean, I'd say fill out as many fields as you can on the submission side. It's easier and faster. But
for
on the
sure.
agent side, you don't want to ask them too much because you want them to get through it as fast as possible.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I definitely recommend like when we're talking about building out that intake form for the agent, try to make that easy peasy breezy, right? Try to make it something that's really straightforward that they're answering. They're popping in the address. They can, this is for if it's a public intake form, they're popping in that address and then they're just saying, yes, no, what are we doing with this? Maybe there's a couple additional fields that they fill out, but for the most part, they're just trying to get that property created with all those things that you need to be mindful of. If you're the one filling out the intake form, make it easy for yourself still. You don't need to make it hard for yourself as well. You can make yourself a nice, easy intake form so that you can get that property populated. And then once it's been submitted to you and it's actually kind of in that waiting period of waiting to be approved, this is when you can start asking for, and I think that this one has it. Here we go. This is where you can start asking for some of those internal fields if you want to. So like earn as many due days. Here I'd put in 3 or 4. I would compare it to the contract kind of thing. This is a secondary intake form, so I don't have one to compare it to, but yeah, I would say that upon approval would probably be best too. Cool.
I
Great
also,
questions.
oh, I was
Oh
gonna say,
yeah, go ahead.
I also waited on fields too. Maybe I didn't need like all these fields to get going. Yes, I needed them, but I was so I wanted to get that intro email out so quickly that like certain fields, yeah, I needed the information. I knew it was there, but maybe I could have that as a task tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
Why bog down myself with something I could do tomorrow because maybe like there wasn't tasks for another couple days. So that was another thing that I did with the intake form also is uh, I mean, do put what you want on it, but at the same time, don't bog yourself down to get it created.
For sure. For sure. I think that when we talk about getting the intake form, when we talk about getting that property created, you have to think, what is the first and most important thing that I want to do the moment that I get this in my system? You'll most likely want to get it populated, maybe get in those dates that are your absolutely necessary, like, the closing date, contract acceptance date, earnest money due date. Those dates are pretty crucial. And then get those intro emails out. But when it comes to the other fields, don't rush to get everything in there right away. You can take your time with entering in all of the other fields. Think of what is hypercritical for that first couple days with the transaction that I absolutely need to get in. That's what should be upon intake approval, right? When you're in this phase here. I absolutely need to select my financing type because when I go and I let them know, like, hey, this is the next steps for this, they know what the financing type is. They know what kind of loan they're looking at. When I send out my intro email to my lenders, I want them to know that, or my title officer, whoever it is that I need to communicate with. These are the critical details that I need to have updated before I send out those intro emails, kind of thing.
And you can use that as like a secondary intake form too, like part
Mm-hmm.
2 of your intake form on day 5 or something like you could do it that way too if you wanted to now that we have secondary intake forms.
For sure.
I was
Absolutely.
the search option in for the search details, that makes it really, really easy to add like that information, like big bulks of information in different field sections all at once. That's super easy too.
Were you thinking this one or were you thinking a different search one?
It was the one that you did before.
Oh, the
Maybe it was
property edit
property.
form?
Yeah, that one.
Yeah.
This one is helpful too if for like day 3 or 4 or 5, if you want to add those fields later.
Mm-hmm.
This
You're
one's a good
like,
one.
it's day 3. I need to get in everything for my HOA. It's day 4. I need to get everything in for my home warranty. It's day 5. I'm checking in to make sure that my inspections have gotten scheduled. Absolutely. I want you guys should definitely think about the timeline of how you want those to go out when you're thinking about data entry into open to close. I don't want you to all feel like you have to enter in all of it right away. There are many ways that we can get the information in after that property has already been created. You just have to think about the critical details that you need on those intro emails, those initial communications that you're sending out. For sure. For sure. Love that. I love that. One thing I was going to ask, does everyone feel comfortable and do you guys understand when we're talking about fields that we're asking on the intake form versus what we're asking internally? Do you guys want me to take a look at the intake form really quickly and kind of show you the difference between the two? And you're welcome to just say yes in the Q&A if you'd like me to do that. Awesome. So let's go ahead and head over to our hammer icon and we'll go into our intake form templates. When we're editing that intake form, the first thing that we're going to default to is our fields. Whenever you're looking at your intake form, that's the first place that I recommend you go. So we're looking at our primary intake form. This is going to be one where people are using it to create the transaction. If we're looking at a secondary intake form, it looks a little bit different. But this is a primary intake form. Fields, here we're going to see, for me, in my system, I see my address first. It's my first field section. You guys might have your transaction details as your first field section. You might have your listing details as your first field section. You could even have commission details as your first field section. It just kind of depends. For me, it's intake questions. The first thing that I recommend you guys do is you go to wherever you have your intake form questions at, whether it's on the first screen or the last tab here at the top, and you're going to review what questions are being asked right now. When we look at these questions, we're looking at our property questions for right now. When we look at these questions, keep in mind that everything on the left-hand side is going to be an agent field. If it says agent field, I want you to keep in your mind, okay, that means it's going to be on the intake form. It's agent facing. That's what they're going to see. On the opposite side, it says internal field. That is going to be what comes onto the property, the answer or the field that comes onto the property. So the way that I have this built out is that I'm requiring my agent tell me if there's a septic on site. I am requiring on that intake form that we're asking, is there a septic on site? And when I have it green on the opposite side, on this right-hand side, I'm saying I want that answer to come onto the property. So this is how I'm saying, okay, I'm requiring this of my intake form, whoever's filling it out, whether that's the agent or myself, I need to make sure that that value's in there. When I have it green on the opposite side, I'm saying I want that answer that I put in there to come onto the property. Anytime you have field selected on the left-hand side, you should automatically have the field, or you should automatically go over and select it on the right-hand side too. We want that answer to come on to the property. If I asked for my HOA on the intake form and I didn't ask for it on the internal side, that answer doesn't come on. And if I have any triggers that are working with it, like adding on the field section for HOA or adding on the document templates for HOA or adding on the task templates for HOA, if this answer doesn't come onto the property in the open to close, the system does not know that you need it. And so it doesn't apply those triggers. So we want to make sure that if we have our left-hand side selected, we want to make sure our right-hand side is selected. Okay. This is mainly for those property questions or those contract questions. That's usually where I see people wanting to make sure we have it selected on this side. We want to make it selected on this side. The red button just makes it required. That's it. We can either make it required or unrequired. On the internal side, and I'm going to go ahead and switch to a different field section. We're going to scroll up and click onto transaction details. And I'm going to scroll down a bit and we're going to take a look at this property details section. I have nothing selected on the internal side, or I'm sorry, on the agent side. None of these I want on my intake form. This is stuff that I want my TC to fill out. My TC is going to have an easier time finding the MLS number. They'll have an easier time taking a look at the contract and populating the year built. I could ask for property occupancy type on the intake form if I wanted to, but I'm having it internal. Same thing with property type. So I don't have any of these selected on my intake form, but on the right-hand side, I have some of them selected and I have some of them required on my internal side. So when it's submitted, I want this MLS number to populate and I want to make it internally required. What does that mean? Well, remember when we were looking at that property, the intake form, and it popped up and it said, not that one. Let me click on the other one. Sorry. And it said financing type and it says earnest money due days. This is what an internally required field looks like. So it asks you to enter in that value before you approve the intake form. So I don't want to approve it just yet. I need to make sure that those internal fields get a value in them first. Heading back over to that intake form. So right now you can see on my intake form, internally, I need my TC to fill out the MLS number, the year built, and the last day of the year and financing type when that intake form is submitted to them. They're going to be either reviewing the contract and entering in those values, or they're going to, know it based off of the information that's already provided to them in the fields. It just kind of depends, right? Typically, I mean, for this, it would probably be the contract. They'd want to pull that up, or they'd look in the MLS for the property so they could put in the address for it, and the MLS number. Whenever I look at this, I have seen recently clients where they have all of these selected and they make them all required. Not every one of these fields needs to get required. If we scroll down on this page, I believe I have, okay, it looks like it's not, but I'm going to go ahead and do that. Oh, here we go. Here we go. I have my closing details selected. All of them are green, but none of them are red. What does this mean? When I just have it green, I'm saying that every single time this intake form is submitted, I want my closing details to come onto the property. I want these 3 fields to come onto the property every single time. I'm not requiring our team to fill it out. We don't know any of this stuff just yet. We have to wait until we know this stuff, but I do want it to be on the property. Okay. So whenever we're talking about fields that we want every single time, all we have to do, for example, earnest money, let's say I need that every single time. I'm just going to click on all here, and that's going to make all of those buttons green. That way, every single time this intake form submitted, my earnest money field section comes onto the property every single time. Any questions on fields or the difference between an internal field, a field that comes onto the property, versus an agent field, a field that comes onto the intake form? Perfect. Part 2 of whenever we're looking at our intake forms and we're kind of deciding which questions we want to ask. For example, my HOA, my house built prior to 1978, even down here with my home protection plan offered or my referral fee, I might want to ask for some more stuff, right? When I ask for HOA, I might want to ask, well, okay, well, what are the fees? And what's the frequency for the fees? When I ask, is the house built prior to 1978? I might need to ask for a lead-based paint inspection. Maybe it's separate from my due diligencies or from my inspection period. I need to reach out and schedule with a specific person to go check the lead at this place, right? If that's the case, what I'm going to want to do is build out a form condition. A form condition is a tool that allows us to dynamically add fields, contact roles, documents, or internal instructions when that intake form is being processed. If we click over here where it says condition action map and I type in HOA, I'm just doing Control F. Oh, it's not on there. Let's do 1978. There we go. I know I have that one on here. I used Control F. I'm on a Mac, or I'm on a PC, or a Microsoft computer. So I use Control F to search the web page. If you are on a Mac, you're going to use Command F to search the web page, and then it'll just search the web page like normal. Here, I could type in whatever I want, and it's going to find me that. So the way that this form condition works is that I have it saying that if field house built prior to 1978 is equal to yes, then I want to bring on this question as well. And if you look below that, will there be a lead-based paint addendum is required? I have another one that says if the field will lead-based paint addenda inspection, sorry, be required is also equal to yes, then I want to ask for the lead-based paint inspection due days. So you can see that we can build these form conditions to ask a question. When they say yes, it brings on another question. And when that's answered yes, it brings on another question. Same thing with our referral information. If I scroll down, here, I want you to take a look at this tree for our referral information. I'm first asking, is there a referral fee? If they say yes, well, who are we paying? Are we paying a company or an agent? Are we paying a flat fee or a percentage? Right? These are the two fields that come on. And when you say it's a flat fee, right, equal to flat fee, it brings on that flat fee amount. When you say it's a percentage, it brings on that percentage amount. If you say that an agent is the person that needs to get paid that fee, it's asking for that referral agent name. If we say it's a company that gave us that referral fee, it's asking us for that referral company name. So that's how our form conditions work. We would build them out to say, all right, I'm going to ask an initial question. Is is the house built prior to 1978? Is there a referral? Is there an inspection? Is there a loan? And based off of that question, if they say yes, or if they say no, because you can build it out for no too. If they say yes or no, maybe there's additional fields that we need to fill out. We've got a question. If we want the TC to enter due days only if the field, okay, wait. If we want the TC to enter due days only if the field is required, how do we make it required for the TC depending on the answer by the agent? So this is where I would say that we would want to have to look at, we would want to look at how we have those questions asked. How do we know the difference between whether it's a hard-coded date or a due days field? Just like how we built out that question for pre-approval due date, you could build it out to say same day as, or have it as that there's a days field. I built it out so that when I say pre-approval is the same day as, or I'm sorry, when it's a number of days, it asks for this on the intake or on the intake form, it asks for the pre-approval due days. If I wanted to use my form condition to say, I'm going to ask my agent pre-approval due date, whether it's same day or due days, and they say due days, but I want my TC to put in the due days. Instead of me building out a form condition to bring on that number of days onto the intake form, I'm going to build out a form trigger. And I'm going to say when it's submitted by the agent, I want to add or remove a field. The field that I'm looking for is going to be that pre-approval due days field. And I'm going to want to make this internally required. And then I'm going to want to open up this trigger, turn it on, and add on that same condition that we would want to use to get that days field to come on. So I'm going to go to pre-approval due if it's equal to number of days, and add that on there. So if you want it to be on the intake form, we're going to build out a form condition. If you want it to be on the internal side, you want your TC to fill out that value, you're going to build out a form trigger. And this is an example of what that form trigger is going to look like. One thing that I see some people kind of skipping over when they're moving through this is that required. Actually, it's kind of a toss up. Some of you guys are like very heavy on I'm going to make all of these I'm going to make all of these fields that I'm triggering. I want to make them all required, which is not a bad thing. But just like how Kelly and I were saying, when you're on that property, the most critical things that you need to fill out should be the things that it's asking for, right? When you need to send out those intro emails, all of the fields that are going to be associated with that intro email, those are the critical ones that you want to get out. If it's something that's not, like, I don't need my HOA fields to be required right from the get-go on my properties, I could then use like my property edit form to then go to my HOA fields 2 days, a day later, 3 days later, to then update the fields here, instead of making it an internally required field for me to fill out when that intake form is approved or when that intake form is submitted to us. I find that some clients will end up saying that they want all of the fields to be required, but you don't have answer to all of those, right? When you have that intake form initially submitted to you. It might take a while for you to hear back from other party members on like, well, actually, I know that there's an HOA, but I don't know what it is. Here's the HOA contact. Can you reach out to them and get the HOA demand from them or the HOA addendum from them so that we could then get it out for signatures? Like it just kind of depends on where you're at and what your process is. So I usually only require those dates, those days fields internally if you need them for that opening email, or you need that from that initial day when you're creating that property. This would be an example of one that we'd probably want initially, right? This is a pre-approval. We want to make sure that we know the date that the pre-approval is due. If there's like a document that's associated with it, or that we need to reach out, we need to make sure we have that pre-approval form. Cool. Great questions today, guys. I really appreciate all of them. If there's any other ones, you can definitely drop them into the Q&A. I'm going to take a look and see if there's any other. I don't think there's any other FAQs I want to necessarily. Well, there's no other FAQs that I can go into without us going over, and I don't want us to go over. We went over last time. Hi, Todd. Welcome in. I'm glad to have all of you guys here today. Thank you so much for joining us. If there's any other questions, you're welcome to drop them into the Q&A, and I'll try to answer them as soon as I can. If you're thinking of things that come up after you get off the call, you go, oh my gosh, I wish I asked Hannah this. Absolutely feel free to submit it to our support as well. And if you really, really need to loop me in, you're welcome to ask for me as well. You can literally say like, oh, Hannah was talking about this on Workshop Wednesday, and I was like, I had another follow-up question, like, how would this work? Or how would I set this up? Our team not only will have probably some strategy for you guys, but they'll loop me in if I need to be involved with it. If there's further context needed for that particular question. So feel free to reach out to our support. You can also email us at help@opentoclose.com as well. Other than that, if you're looking for more webinars like today's webinar, you're going to go over to our Learn tab. You're going to click on Webinars, and you'll see all the webinars that we currently have. If you are just getting started with Open to Close, you're a TC, you just want to know what the vibe is about. All right, what is this all about? Come over here and check out this Getting Started guide here. It's 30 minutes. It just goes over and it talks about all of the kind of nuances with Open to Close to get you a good idea of how you would want to kind of come in here and start tackling things within the system. Workshop Wednesday is our live Wednesday Q&A strategy sessions that we have with our team. And then below that, we have some on-demand webinars. These are going to be ones where you're learning about how to import your processes into Open to Close, as well as making updates. So not just new processes, but you can also make updates to your existing processes as well. So this is a great call for anyone who's like, I need to add on a bunch of email triggers to a bunch of task templates. Check out the Importing 101. Right? It's not just for clients who are brand new to Open to Close and importing task templates. This is also super helpful. Our team uses these tools when we're in onboarding and when we're in optimization to get your guys' content into your system. So I definitely recommend this if you're brand new and you want to learn how to import, or if you've been working with us for a while and you're like, you know what? I think it's time I make some updates. Check out the Importing 101 class. That might have a lot of answers. These other classes that we have here are mainly for training and learning how to use the system, customizing that pre-built account and getting it set up for yourselves. And then we also have a couple other, I don't know if they're not all on here, but we do have a couple more features that are newer to the system that I would definitely recommend you guys taking a look at. I don't want anyone's to like miss seeing this feature. So if you haven't already, secondary intake forms came out just recently. We had a training on it today internally. I definitely recommend you guys coming and taking a look at secondary intake forms as soon as you can. There might be something here with secondary intake forms while you're building out your process that this could be a solution for, right? So all you have to do is head over to, you can do it in our dashboard, or from your dashboard, you can go to your person icon to Support Center. Within this area, you're going to go to Learn and Help Guides. And then you'll just search in the search bar, secondary intake forms. And here you're going to see that video. This was a webinar. It is now this included on the article. I definitely recommend coming in and taking a look at this to see how those secondary intake forms work. If you guys have any questions about strategy, we can review that on our next Wednesday workshop, or again, like I said, you can submit them to support as well. And we'll get those answers, those questions answered. Awesome, guys. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Yeah, I can't wait to talk to you, Todd. I will see you tomorrow morning. And I'll see anyone else who I might have scheduled with me on my calendar. I hope to see you guys soon. Other than that, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your Wednesday. Make sure that you stretch right now. Get up, do some jumping jacks. It's so good for your nervous system to do some jumping jacks. I didn't realize how good it was until I started doing it myself, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, I have so much more energy." And you kind of need energy when you're sitting down at a desk all day. So make sure you move, get up, stretch, do some jumping jacks, drink some water. I want you to stay warm if you need to stay warm, stay cool if you need to stay cool, and I will see you guys next Wednesday.